Hi, we're here conducting a bullying webinar put on by Miss Fenn, the Wamogo School Middle School counselor. And in the room with me is Mrs. Lambert, the assistant principal, and Deb Foley, our school social worker as well. And Ms. Fenn, do you want to
Yep,
start?
I'll
Take
pick
over?
up.
Okay.
As I went through putting this presentation together, I wanted to hit some definite components of what bullying is, and I found several different definitions. This one I thought kind of hit the nail on the head. What is the definition of bullying? It's a person who's bullied when he or she is a person is bullied when he or she is exposed repeatedly and over time to negative actions on the part of one or more other persons, and he or she has difficulty defending himself or herself. Um, Three major components. It is aggressive behavior that involves unwanted negative attention actions. It typically involves an imbalance of strength or power. And this is something that I would like to really highlight. True bullying is about abuse of power. It's also a pattern of behavior repeated over time. I found a clip as I was doing this research of a woman who was speaking to what the differentiating between bullying and mean behavior. I think sometimes bullying could be overused, and what we try to do here at Wamogo is if there's mean behavior coming up, we try to target that and put an end to that before it turns into that repeated pattern of behavior that I spoke to before.
Do you want to be debt-free? Bankruptcy will erase the
Sorry
bill,
about
let
the
you keep your exempt property and get
beginning
you a
clip.
fresh start. We can take care of everything by phone. Zero down to start. That's right. For no money down, call Oswald Law, 1-800-BANKRUPT. That's 1-800-BANKRUPT. Call now.
Well, it is something nearly every parent is hearing about or wondering about, especially these days, bullying. There's even been a documentary made about it. And gosh, we know it's been going on for decades, right? Through the years. But our next guest says that's not the only thing parents have to watch out for.
Yeah, and the best way to educate kids is to entertain them while teaching them a lesson. Sue Levin is the author of the Susie's Shoesies series. You've also advised schools on these issues, but you say there's a difference between bullies and kids just acting out. Good morning to you.
Exactly. Good morning. It's great to be here. Yeah, it's important to remember that in the definition of bullying, we're talking about a repetitive, persistent harassment of hurtful behavior, whether it's verbal, physical, emotional, writing things on the back of the stall in the bathroom or on the internet. Cyberbullying is a big deal now, with the intent to be intimidating the target of that behavior.
But what's been so interesting about all this chatter about bullying, and of course this documentary, what was so interesting during the breaks, you're saying it's very easy to create a mass hysteria among children, and that's why it's so important to have this conversation to make a distinction between what's bullying and what's not.
Right. You know, the old adage, oh, boys will be boys. This is how kids behave. It's a rite of passage. No. Many schools have a zero tolerance for this type of behavior, which can sometimes contribute, if they don't really have a clear understanding of what bullying really is, to like a little hysteria. And so when a child on a one-time basis maybe shoves a kid, that's inappropriate behavior, to be sure, and should be dealt with. But unless it's happening in a repetitive manner meant to intimidate, as opposed to just being a little bit of a jerk, that's the big difference.
Here's a question I have. As a parent, what do you do? Because, you want to protect your child. You want to go there in person and want to fight for this kid. But what do you do?
The parent of the child is being bullied?
Yes.
Such an important question. One of the first things that the parent needs to do is get their child to talk. Get them talking to you. And in addition to that, You also want to make sure that the child doesn't blame themselves. Sometimes they feel it's their fault, that they even deserve this. So that's another thing you really have to be careful about. And third, you have to give your child hope for the future. And one of the ways to do this is to give them an immediate course of action that they can take if they feel they are being bullied. And that leads us to the University of Oregon program, which is called Stop, Walk, and Talk. And what that means is, if you feel, sweetheart, if you feel like you're being intimidated by someone in school, you stop right in your place, even give the timeout sign, stop, you walk away, and then find an adult to talk to.
Sue Levin, thank you very much. Your books are available at the Barnes & Noble at Kierland, and we're going to put the rest of our information up on our hotline. We appreciate your time this morning.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Thank you for spreading such an important message.
And just to elaborate on what the author was talking about, mean behavior versus bullying. Mean behavior typically looks like behavior that is not planned. It sometimes happens spontaneously. It could be directed towards any child nearby. There may be remorse once the harm is pointed out. It could look like making fun of others, using a hurtful name, taking others' belongings, or leaving a child out. But again, it's not that repeated behavior, the pattern of behavior that bullying is.
And realistically, the term bullying is so synonymously used with so many people. I think we may have somebody on the line. Hi, are you into the webinar?
Yes, I am.
Oh, very good. I just want to make sure that everybody's on and is into the webinar. So go ahead, Chris. Continue.
The term bullying has become very generalized, as Mr. Egan just said, and overused and a catch-all for almost any negative behavior directed at another individual. The state of Connecticut has come up with a phrase called mean-spirited behavior to define inappropriate behavior aimed at another student or group. At Wamogo, this is what we try to target, this mean-spirited behavior. We promote friendship and respect, and we try to put an end to that behavior before it escalates into anything more.
And sometimes, really, these terms get used together so many times when parents call, or sometimes even a child comes in. I'm being bullied, and realistically, we have to back it up and work with our experts like Mrs. Foley and Mrs. Fenn to really point out, well, certainly the behavior is not okay, and it's not tolerated, and we're going to deal with it. However, it's not necessarily bullying; it may just be mean behavior.
And I think we do a lot of education on that throughout our day, and with our students and our student leaders who work with other students to say it's not okay when they see it out in our community. I think that's one of the biggest pushes that we've had with our friendship and respect movement is kids telling other kids that behavior is not okay here. We don't act like that here at Wamogo.
Right. It's important to realize that bullying is not something that is prevented. There are bullying behaviors. There really are no bullies. But bullying is really a school culture item. If we let children know that we don't tolerate certain behaviors at our school, then they will self-monitor that. So we're hoping that kids do advocate for one another and do realize that that's not the kind of school that we want to have or that we do have.
I think that also the thing that's so exciting here is that students embrace that, and students are saying we don't want that kind of atmosphere here, and really we're the ones who want to change it as opposed to the teachers or administration. It's really student driven, and the students themselves will recognize that. So we're lucky here at Wamogo, I think.
And if if your child is experiencing any of this mean-spirited behavior and they come home, I've listed some of the warning signs.
Now, Ms. Fenn, some of these warning signs go along with many different things, correct?
Right.
For adolescents particularly.
Right. And so what I was going to point out is that you really, if you see these signs, you really need to open up those lines of communication with your child. And if they won't talk to you, get them to talk to another adult, whether it be somebody here at school or a trusted adult outside of school. It's important that they feel connected to somebody to talk to disclose what's going on so we can put an end to it.
Very good. Do you want to take a look at some of these videos, or what are we looking at? Is this more for parents just to view?
Yeah, I think we can leave those and just move on to the next screen.
Okay. And a lot of times, sometimes parents do call and ask, well, what can I do? I'm not sure how I can help with this problem.
Right. And I think, again, here are some things that you can do. And really asking those open-ended questions, getting them to talk, having them provide as much information to you, and for you to really kind of be that patient, supportive parent that you are, and listen and um, talk to them about some coping skills, coping mechanisms. And if it's really too much and you think you need help, then it's okay to ask for help with this. We're here, and we have plenty of outside resources too available.
So you guys as experts, Mrs. Foley and Mrs. Fenn, you'll actually sit and talk with parents about ways they can help work on intervention strategies and things like that at home?
Absolutely. And now this leads us to cyberbullying, which, with all the technology, is a really big problem. And I think that sometimes parents um, can be a little bit left out of the loop. So what we're going to just talk about today is, what you can do to be a part of your kids' cyber world to keep them safe. Um, so
I was going to say, we run the webinars on Twitter and different things like that. And sometimes parents say, well, what do I need it for? In many respects, even if it's just to find out what your kids are doing and how they're using different things, I think that's a valuable skill in and of itself, just so they can help navigate what their kids are into.
right.
Certainly, I think I've often said this. Truly, I think that even today, kids are nicer now than they've ever been. I said, but for me, the difference is the technological tools that kids have now don't allow for as much monitoring in some ways, or it's not so public. Like once you put something, there's a digital permanence that happens. So, and it's easy to do. You can type "I hate you" in something, and it's there forever.
Right. And it can also be transmitted to hundreds and hundreds of people, which could be a problem and embarrassing.
Good.
Okay, so what can we do to prevent cyberbullying? That's going to be the next slide. Again, keeping those lines of communication open is key. Know the site your kids visit. Where are they going and who are they going with? You need to be able to sit down and talk to them and tell them that knowing their passwords is okay. It's okay for you to have a password to something, and you're not violating their privacy. You're just trying to keep them safe because you still are their parents.
Very good. And again, it seems like all of these have a message. Contact the school. Contact you if there's an issue.
Right.
And I think following your students. So if they have a Twitter or they have a Facebook, following what they're posting is also really important. And I think a lot of parents know that, but you might not have a Twitter, you might not have some of the tools that they have, but it might be worth developing those so that you can have that line of communication open with them as well.
Well, very good. And certainly I see some steps here what to do if you suspect cyberbullying is happening. Again, I've had on Twitter, sometimes every once in a while you get these tweets from people, you have no idea who they are, no idea what it is, and I block the person. I think that's a great message. Just block this person from whatever social media forum that you're using so they can't communicate with you.
Right. And that's what I tell the kids too if they come in. If there's somebody if there's a problem on one of those social media sites, just get off of it. Stay away from it. And that's really your best prevention. And I would advise you do that. You tell that to your kids as well.
Good. And then this is a wonderful thing I know from Mrs. Lambert and myself. Certainly, we don't like to have to deal with any bullying issues, but even for a counselor or a social worker or ourselves, we need evidence of what exactly is said. So keep that evidence is a great message.
And the last one, don't respond to and don't forward. Try to stay out of it. You don't need to feed into it, and that's what I tell the kids as well.
And again, this is a great message. What do you do if your child's one engaging in this mean-spirited behavior?
Yeah, and there's lots of things as you can see. I think really the one that stands out for me is teach by example. Kids will follow their parents' lead. So if you're teaching them empathy and respect and compassion, and we're working on friendship and respect on our end, I think that it'll be a good wholesome approach to it because they're getting it in school and at home.
That's a great message.
The other thing that we do have here, we have peer leaders and peer counselors who are. We just started that. Oh, it's in your next slide. sorry, I'm just jumping ahead, but these are peers who can help teach them different ways of handling it, because usually mean spirited behavior isn't, um, no student wants to be mean. They sometimes will do that kind of behavior because maybe they don't know what else to do. Maybe they do have an issue with a student, and they don't know how to articulate that or get themselves out of the situation or handle themselves in a different way. So we have peer counselors who will help model different behaviors and help them to kind of work through those things so that we can stop mean spirited behavior at that level as well. Sometimes they don't really want the adults to give them feedback, or maybe we can't give them feedback that would work for them. And a peer could give them different tools, and we've seen that work pretty well, I think. And we're actually expanding that program. So hopefully that will help some of that as well. I think we're putting a lot of new things in place to just continue add support here.
Right.
Well, in many respects, I mean, ultimately, this top one, creating a positive school climate. Climate is key in almost every aspect of what you have in a school. If students feel engaged, they feel connected, they feel like it's a place for them. You're going to see less negative behaviors in any regard, whether it's mean spirited, whether it's bullying, all of that. So, I mean, certainly that's our goal as a school.
Right.
And these are some resources that you have for everybody.
There's some
links.
resources on there, yeah, and there's tons of resources out there on the web. So if you want any direction as to which way you should go, certainly contact Mrs. Fenn or Mrs. Foley, and we will point you in the right direction. And those two video clips are good to take a look at. One they actually both talk about cyberbullying and some things parents can do to get involved.
Well, this is great, and obviously we're going to record this and put it on the website for people to take a look at. But I want to thank you, Mrs. Fenn, and for putting together this presentation, and Ms. Foley for participating in this presentation. So I want to thank you both, and once again let families know that we're here for your support, and if you need us, thanks again, and thank you, Mrs. Lambert, as well for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.